Hey Raiders Nation, what's up? It's time to dive into the latest on our beloved team. Things have been a bit rough lately, but there are still some bright spots shining through the clouds. So let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders and what's been going on lately. Sure, things are looking pretty tough right now, but there are still some bright spots we can focus on. For starters, DJ Glaze has been showing some potential these past few weeks. We should definitely keep an eye on him moving forward. Now, I'll be honest, he didn't have his best game against the Chiefs. I spotted at least 4 or 5 plays where he just seemed a bit off. And that's just from what I saw on the broadcast. I haven't even looked at the game tape yet. Another big question is whether the Raiders have a reliable running back in Alexander Mattison or Dylan WBE. Do they need to splash some cash or maybe use a high draft pick to snag a solid player? This is something worth analyzing as the season goes on. And don't forget about Isaiah Paul Hemau. Is he the future of the Raiders? That's a question we'll have to keep an eye on. Now, let's get into what went down against the Kansas City Chiefs. Honestly, it felt like the Raiders practically handed this game away. Okay, maybe handed it away is a bit harsh, but the offense did everything they could to avoid winning. There were plenty of moments where, if they just seized the opportunities the defense gave them, the score could have looked way different. The final score was 27-20, with the Raiders losing by a touchdown. It's frustrating because the defense created some golden chances. Remember that time in the third quarter when the Raiders defense intercepted Patrick Mahomes? They got the ball all the way down to the 2-yard line, which should have been a prime scoring opportunity. But instead, they totally flopped and couldn't turn those chances into points, which made all the difference in the end. The Chiefs' defense was solid, but the Raiders' offense was just a mess. In their first 3 possessions, they tried to run the ball and stick to this idea of being a physical team. By week 8, you should know if you're a physical team or not, and it's clear the Raiders aren't there yet. They might be working on it, but they haven't established that identity on offense. Most coaches have a good sense of what their team can and can't do, but the Raiders seem dead set on proving they can power through opponents. If you watch their games, it's obvious they're not that kind of team. On that crucial 2-yard line situation, they ran the ball 3 times in a row and ended up losing yards. On 4th down, DJ Glaze lost his blocker, and the quarterback Manu got sacked while trying to scramble. That kind of moment can make or break a game. Earlier, the defense forced a 3-and-out, giving the Raiders a fantastic chance. They returned the punt about 15 to 20 yards, plus a 15-yard penalty tacked on. They started their drive at the Chiefs' 32-yard line, but only managed to gain about 10 yards, settling for a field goal. There was even a false start by right guard Jordan Meredith that didn't help at all. I'll need to check the tape to confirm, but it looked like that one was on him. In the end, like so many other drives, it fell apart, and they missed out on valuable points. In those 2 key drives, the Raiders only had to cover a combined 39 yards, but they walked away with just 3 points. That's where they lost the game. When you can't score in the red zone with opportunities handed to you, it's a tough road to victory. Later, when the Raiders were down by 7 with about 7 or 8 minutes left, they had a shot to make a comeback. But then, Manu fumbled on 2nd down. The Chiefs jumped on it, drove down the field, and scored another touchdown, pushing their lead to 14 points with 5 minutes left. Some fans might say the Raiders' final touchdown was just garbage time, and I get it. In the end, the Chiefs had the upper hand, and the Raiders couldn't capitalize on key opportunities. Now, there's been some debate among fans about whether the Raiders should just tank the rest of the season. While some folks might argue for that, let's not forget that winning games still matters. Sometimes wide receivers need those key moments to prove themselves. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs. They've shown that even when the quarterback, offensive line, or run game is struggling, it's still possible to come out on top. The Chiefs are sitting pretty, even if Patrick Mahomes has thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. It's all about finding ways to win, even when things aren't perfect. Players like DJ Glaze need to step up in those clutch moments, especially when facing tough opponents like Chris Jones one-on-one. And it's not just on Glaze, the running backs and wide receivers need to step it up too. Right now, the Raiders are sitting at 2-6, along with a few other struggling teams. They hold the 7th overall draft pick, but honestly, a draft pick isn't everything. Who knows which quarterbacks will become stars? Just look at the Carolina Panthers. They've got Bryce Young, but sometimes having a good QB isn't enough. It's about having a complete team, a solid roster, and a strong coaching staff. The Raiders need to rally together as a team, focus on getting better, and keep growing. The Patriots, Jaguars, and Saints all have quarterbacks. showing that winning games often involves more than just trying to lose the rest of the season. But the reality is, the Raiders aren't a strong team right now, and it's doubtful they'll win many more games. Sure, there's a tiny chance they could go on a hot streak and snag a few wins, but that seems unlikely. Let's shift gears to the Raiders' offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy. It's clear he's not doing a great job. There have been several crucial moments, like having the ball on the 37-yard line or near the goal line, where the team just couldn't score. Those missed chances really sting, like that one third-down play where the quarterback rolled to his left and threw deep. But wide receiver Trey Tucker stopped mid-route, leaving everyone confused. What's going on with this offense? The main issue seems to be that the offensive system just wasn't installed properly, leaving players lost. When you watch successful teams like the San Francisco 49ers, you see that everything is executed perfectly. The quarterback and receivers are always on the same page, and the linemen know exactly what to do for each play. But with the Raiders, there's so much miscommunication. You'll catch tackles and tight ends bumping into each other or not knowing who to block. In one goal line situation, DJ Glaze and the tight end blocked the wrong way, letting a linebacker sneak through and disrupt the play. Moments like these, where players aren't executing properly, are piling up and reflecting poorly on Luke Getsy's leadership. Ultimately, this lack of coordination and discipline is holding the team back. With better coaching and clearer strategies, the Raiders could have potentially beaten the Chiefs and thrown a wrench in their perfect season. But for now, the struggle continues. There was a glimmer of hope for the Raiders. Maybe if they won a few games, they'd be back in the mix. But with the season going as it is, that hope seems pretty much gone. They're up against the Bengals next week, a team that's not exactly great, but the chances of a turnaround seem slim. It's a real bummer because the Raiders have some talented players like Brock Bowers and Jacoby, along with guys like Alexander Mattison and Zamir White. But these players aren't finding success, and a lot of that comes down to the offensive scheme. The real problem is with the blocking scheme and execution. Players are missing blocks, running into each other, and not knowing their assignments. Today they tried to run an outside zone play with Zamir White, which didn't match what Coach Antonio Pierce had said earlier about sticking to successful plays, like running power plays that worked against the Ravens. Despite this, the Raiders strayed from that successful formula. White had just 2 carries. One gained 4 yards, and the other lost 5, leaving him with negative yardage for the day. That's tough when you're facing 2nd and 7, and it turns into 3rd and long, leading to punts and giving the Chiefs more chances to score. In one drive, the Raiders managed to march down the field and score a touchdown, showing glimpses of their potential. They even had Desmond Ridder briefly come in for a play, but it was negated by a penalty. It looked like the Raiders were trying a read option play, but the whistle blew before anything could happen. Despite those brief flashes, the issue still lies with Gardner Minshew and Luke Getsy. Some folks even say Minshew might actually be a better quarterback than Getsy is as an offensive play caller. It's a bold claim, but one that seems more believable as the season drags on. If I were Antonio Pierce, I'd seriously think about making a drastic change and letting Getsy go. The problem is, by keeping Getsy around, the Raiders seem to be accepting a tanked season, clinging to the hope that he can somehow turn things around. But based on last year's experiences, a midseason shakeup could at least give the team a chance. Getsy's past with the Bears wasn't too promising, and he hasn't improved with the Raiders either. Critics shows lack of faith in Luke Getsy, and some people argued that maybe the issue was Justin Fields or something else. But now, it's clear that Getsy's offensive system is broken. When a team is consistently struggling with execution and cohesion, it often points back to the coaching staff. That's a wrap for this week, Raiders Nation. While we may be facing some tough times, let's remember to rally behind our team and support our players as they strive to find their footing. Here's hoping for a turnaround as we look ahead to the next game.